the frequent relapse after IMF programs and then going back to the fund, is to come back and try to live within our means. And as I said, living within our means is not about living within the $12 billion revenue that we collect. Okay? Because if you are poor and then you try to live within your means, you become a poor person forever. So living within our means is not about living within the $12 billion. That's not enough. So we need to introduce policies, find means of enlarging that means so that we can raise our expenditure, especially development expenditure. I must also say that as a country, we need to build buffers, economic and financial buffers, such that even if there's a shock, like COVID or Russia-Ukraine war, you will be able to withstand the shocks much better. That is what we have not been able to do. Because as we are speaking, some of our peers, even in Africa, they are coping much better than we are doing. It's not every one of them that is going to the fund. And why is that? Maybe it's because they were able to build the kind of stronger, economic and financial buffers. And I'm talking about, for instance, you ensure that what we call the primary balance in the budget, at least is positive on a consistent basis. Because that is what really feeds into your debt. If your primary balance is negative, it creates debt for you. If you try to make it positive, so we should force ourselves to ensure that we have positive primary balances going forward. That's one. We should also try and create some kind of sinking fund. Understand, there was one, I don't know whether it is still there, so that you feed it with funds such that you can later fall on it to, if you have to repay your debt. The petroleum funds, we should make sure that the stabilization fund, the heritage fund, we should make sure that there are funds in there and that the minister is not allowed to encroach on the stabilization fund and use it for a different purpose. I would even go further to say that to restrict borrowing, not leave it to the whims, the discretion of the finance minister and all that. We can, in addition to the deficit ceiling in the Fiscal Responsibility Act, we can also add a ceiling on borrowing. Okay, that's something that I am going to push very strongly. In other words, if the deficit ceiling is not enough, let's also put a ceiling there on borrowing. We can relate it to maybe last year's revenue, for instance, a portion. In other words, if you raise more revenue and then you borrow more, I'm sure that we will be in a better place. Because so I can relate the ceiling, to maybe last year's revenue, but we can think of other indicators, for imposing a ceiling. So I'm talking about, we need to build economic and financial buffers in the such that we can better withstand shocks, because we have now been exposed to these shocks. We were not prepared. As we are talking, our inflation has crossed 30%, 31.7%. Ivory Coast inflation is 5%. And why is that? Why are they doing better than we? Much better than we are doing. Okay, their exchange rate, of course, their exchange rate is pegged. So it is not, moving as fast as. Again, talking about the buffers, restricting government access to Bank of Ghana financing could also be something that we need to, resist. You see, because as you must have heard, Bank of Ghana is calling an emergency meeting tomorrow. And Bloomberg has already is anticipating that they will raise the policy rate by 200 basis points, and they are citing a problem that has emerged that the Bank of Ghana has been monetizing the fiscal deficit, which there should be restrictions. Okay, so these are some of buffers that you need to create, so that you will not be so vulnerable to the shocks when they come.
Now, you mentioned the currency differentials or the forex situation as we have it now with the depreciation of the cedi, and when, for all things being equal, the $3 billion from the IMF comes through, how it's going to impact on that. We're also expecting the $750 million loan from the Afro-Exim Bank. Before Parliament has approved that, the $1.3 billion from the cocoa syndicated loan. But with the current situation we have now, how much of an impact would pumping in more dollars have on the depreciation of the cedi because of how the dollar is also gaining strength globally? What difference would it make?
Well, of course, any inflows like that, whether it's coming from the IMF. You see, the IMF program, another advantage is that it can also catalyze loans from other sources, apart from the IMF itself. Okay. And then, of course, you mentioned the $750 million loan, and then the cocoa syndicated loan may also come. But you see, I don't think that it is sustainable to try and let your currency depend on external loans, to support it. I have always argued that on a long-term basis, it's not sustainable, okay? So that is why these inflows, they come in all the time. In the past, when we were going to the Eurobond market to borrow, of course, that helped to stabilize the exchange rate a bit, okay? But you see, the thing is that if you borrow today to cushion your exchange rate, now, one day, because we are borrowed, there will be a reverse, flow of whatever you borrowed out. Bank of Ghana will have to pay it out. So the pressure will come back on your city. Not today, but in the future. Okay? So all these loans you are taking to cushion the city now, is it because the demand for the city, for foreign exchange, dollars, is so huge that if you try to throw all your foreign exchange at it, that is why Bank of Ghana, for instance, their reserves is reducing, and they are mindful of that. They were at 9 point something billion, they are now about 7 point something. They are mindful of that, because if they throw all it away, and protect the cedi, they have very little even to cover imports. So what I'm saying is that the solution to the cedi problem is not to go in for these loans. It will provide some stability, cushion now, but it is not sustainable. The most sustainable way is to do something about the economy, the structure of the economy. What do we export? If we continue to export, low value added primary products, which give us, very little, value, okay, instead of processing, adding value to it. That is the way we should be going. And also, industrialization, that will help us to produce, products, here, so that we don't have to import everything. So, but this is long term. But the long term, you should start from somewhere. You cannot say it's long term. It's long term. So we should see serious signs of restructuring of this economy. Cocoa. Even cocoa is a simple example. We've been relying on cocoa forever, and between us and Ivory Coast, we produce about 60% of cocoa. Yeah, and we rely on the international cocoa market is valued at $10 billion, dollars. So Ivory Coast and Ghana and the rest, we all compete for this $10 billion. Meanwhile, the chocolate market is worth $100 billion. Okay? So between Ghana and Ivory Coast, why don't we have the biggest, chocolate factory in the world? Why is it situated in Switzerland? Why? So we should start from somewhere, to restructure this economy, and that is the only way we can avoid, being so vulnerable, such that, even going to the IMF, may be an option. Okay, I'll never say never. I mean, never will we go to the IMF, because you can find yourself in a situation where you may have to go to the IMF. Even the UK has gone to the IMF before. This was a long time ago. You see, but it's a frequency. We need to be able to graduate more permanently from the IMF, as some of our peers have already done.
Dr. John Kwakye, thank you so much.
Thank you so much
for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.